We get a lot of training in the cognitive aspects of the job, in the law, but we also need specialist training when it comes to navigating human responses. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Camilla, and we're the founders of Trauma Informed Law. And together with our team, we work across the legal sector to provide training and support to teams and individuals.
And it's not just that we work with trauma, it's how we work with trauma. We bring in cutting-edge science, and we're aligned with the leading trauma experts in recognising that it's not just about how we think cognitively, it's also about how we feel and how it shows up in our bodies. Trauma doesn't always announce itself. It often lies hidden until we learn to spot the signs.
Well, actually, some of the leading trauma experts say, if you think you haven't seen trauma, maybe you haven't been looking.
And I think that's really true. For me, when I was in the commercial world, I started to understand more about trauma and I started to see its presence. So for a witness, watching those subtle physiological body signs that they'd moved into a state of freeze, which meant they couldn't access their best evidence. Or with a client who says yes, but they actually mean no, but they can't access that no because they're locked into a state of compliance, which is a trauma response.
I can think of one for myself, actually. Being in court and my opponent doing something that activated, I don't know whether it was a memory or something for me, and just made my brain freeze. I couldn't find my words, I didn't have any logic.
I've definitely had that. And I guess what we're saying then is, without trauma awareness, we might misjudge behaviour, we might miss vital information, and we might get stuck ourselves.
So for us, bringing science into the frame, particularly the science of the nervous system and the brain, makes so much sense. It really helps us to validate the responses and to navigate them more skillfully. And I think we always talk about how it starts with the self. It certainly did for me. So starting to really understand the responses in myself and to be able to then steady myself and actually become more skillful.
And that's why we structure our training the way we do. Because as we become more skillful in navigating our own responses, we then become more skillful in noticing and navigating others' responses.
And then it becomes second nature, which is really important because then we can cater for the possibility of trauma being there. And we can reduce the risk of causing further harm to others and ourselves.
We get a lot of training in the cognitive aspects of the job, in the law, but we also need specialist training when it comes to navigating human responses because they're complex, particularly in the dynamics of the legal system, and particularly when they're responses that are at the more acute end of the spectrum, like trauma and distress.
Trauma and distress, as we know, affects the neurobiology in a really different way to stress. So it actually has an impact on our communication, our relationships, our processing, and even our memory.
And those are such crucial functions when it comes to legal processes for barristers, but also for clients and witnesses. So what I think we're saying is, if we know that there's a point at which trauma and distress change the way we function, and if we know that that point is often encountered in legal processes because of their high stakes, high pressure nature, then how can we not include trauma-informed practice as a core competency for the legal sector?